Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Flash as well as the latest episode of Arrow. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I included time on the show to talk about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you don't want to hear what I had to say about this week's episode of The Flash, you can skip to what I had to say about this week's episode of Arrow. But the first thing I want to talk about is this week's episode of The Flash. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, there's a whole situation with Romero, which I didn't catch that last episode, but I'm catching it this episode, is that, he's Romero, and he kind of came back from the dead, because he is still technically dead, but whatever it is that's inside of him reanimated him, and basically, as this creature, he's basically feeding off of dark matter. It's almost like this hunger for it. And I guess it's kind of the only, because every time he consumes some, it makes him stronger. And obviously, Barry ends up bringing Frost into this case. And obviously, this leads them to Ramsey because Frost / Caitlin realizes how much Ramsey was desperate about, dark matter. And so obviously she's not too keen on the whole, going about things the more procedural way, because it's just kind of like, it was most likely an animal that killed these people. Can we go now? These guns have no she would just kind of like, all right, let's get this done. Later on, we kind of figure out why that is, but we'll get to that soon enough. But obviously Barry and, the team have to turn to Ramsey for help because he's an expert on this whole situation. He's even saying I'll help in this regard. I do love the fact is that Frost just shows up, literally blade his neck and everything, and he kind of brings it up later of how could you not tell me that you were Metahum? I thought we were that close. It's I guess we're not that close. I guess we don't really know each other that well, considering the fact is you're still being desperate about this whole dark matter situation. The fact that you went behind Caitlin's back and got it anyway. I mean, to be fair, she kept trying to warn you the ramifications of it, but you didn't want to listen, so. And obviously, he's not trying to own up to his own mistake because he knows he's responsible for this whole Romero situation, but, he's acting dumb about it. But even Barry kind of took the not beat because Barry saw his desperation and was like, yeah, I know that you're in this for more than just trying to help save the day. You have your ulterior motives, because basically he was trying to gather up dark matter on his own, steal some from Star Labs, but Barry caught him. And for him, it's it's not just my mom that died from it. It's not me just saving other people. It's me saving myself. Every day I'm clicking closer and closer to, the end of my life. It's just kind of you're just waiting to be pushed off the edge is kind of how he was kind of putting it, which obviously, Barry can relate on many different levels. One, he watched, his mom died, so that was kind of a hard thing for him, but also, he understands what it's like to have a ticking clock against you, because that's what he's dealing with now. I'm told that not only am I going to die, I need to die if it means saving not only the people I care about, but everyone. So it turns into that whole thing as well. So, and obviously when Ramsey looks at Barry, all he sees is, his mom, someone who just accepts their diagnosis is but don't you want to fight it? Which obviously that's a conversation he had with Iris, and that's the whole thing too. Because it's how do you fight destiny? If you fight destiny, so many people will die, and it's so. Are you willing to just give up and save so many people? Because obviously, like I said, Iris last episode was no, we got to find another way. And Elle tried to, but out of the billions of possibilities he saw, the only way this ends is if he dies. And that means saving everyone else in the process. So it's a complicated situation he finds himself in. But Ramsey is kind of acting out of it's so interesting because you can't have, I think you can, under his circumstances, you can be both selfless and selfish at the same time, because it's your ulterior motives, you make it seem all your grand motives is to help people, which, yeah, that's there, but at the same time, it's also but first and foremost, I've got to save my own life, because for him, he saw his mom just giving up so easily, and he saw her giving up as cowardice, that's come up before, so he wants to be no, I'm gonna fight this, because it's it's not just my life at stake, this is just everyone else's, because obviously it's going to start with this particular disease, but then he's going to spread out to eventually probably trying to find a way to stop other diseases as well, so that no one ever has to die. Because I think it's that thing of when you lose someone that's so important to you, and you see just almost how random life can be, in a sense that just this person that was close to you has this particular thing, and so do you, and it's the whole thing of you know, it brings mortality into the forefront for you, which that's actually kind of an interesting message of this episode, because like the same thing is like that's why Frost was acting the way she was, why she was like super aggro and stuff, why she's like she didn't want to waste time on this case, because it's like she ends up bringing it up later on, because it's like for her it's like, now I'm learning I'm going to die in this crisis. I literally started living for the first time. I'm starting to have my own life, and I haven't had a chance to live. I've basically lived vicariously through, you know, I've been a mirror to Caitlyn. I've never had my own life, and now that I have my own life, you're literally telling me I'm gonna die in like 7 weeks anyway. So it does put a damper on that, especially for you know, Frost, who is trying to live it up and enjoy it. It's actually kind of interesting, because I'm curious, like, is she going to stay Frost the entire season, or is she going to bounce back and forth? Because like this is the second episode in a row where she's stayed Frost, and I thought that was kind of like fascinating. So I mean, it's going to be interesting to kind of see whether that ends up being the case or not. But I think it's kind of an interesting, you know, because obviously it's like, basically it's like, you know, Barry tells her like literally everyone feels that because the whole thing of like life can, you know, there is a time stamp on everyone's life, that life could come to an end for anyone at any moment, which, and in a weird way, Frost is like, honestly, that does make me feel better to know, basically to know that you're not the only one that deals with the whole like concept of mortality. That the fact of the matter is, you know, it's like all you can do is you can't be too worried about tomorrow. The very least you have today, so make the most of it, you know, because tomorrow is never guaranteed, you know. So I thought, you know, obviously that's a beautiful message to kind of keep in mind, and I think that's something Barry probably, you know, needed to remind himself of, and obviously that's something I don't think Ramsey's willing to hear, but he learns and sees that the fact is that the thing that Romero has become reacts to him. It mimics him, and it's almost like a mirror image to a certain extent, almost just like the parallels between Caitlyn and Killer Frost. And I think that's kind of interesting. Luckily, they were able to stop him by injecting him with a whole bunch of dark matter, and it became too much. And you know, and then like one of the androids. Yeah, it's kind of like the androids from DBZ. Once again, me and my anime references. Well, just other nerdy references. I've been kind of on fire with that lately, because lately I've been referencing Kingdom Hearts like crazy. But like in DBZ, like the whole thing of like defeating the androids is like literally filling it with so much energy they can't contain it all. So it's kind of a similar thing in that regard. And with Pop and Barry and Frost ended up covering goop. So I also do love the fact is that we get to celebrate Frost's birthday. She gets to have her first birthday party, and they're like throwing. It's actually kind of neat, that, you know, especially knowing what is to come, for them to have this moment of celebration. I thought was kind of neat. And the fact is, we see at least some of her criminal allies are there, because Home Dude that she was kicking it with the dude who had like the snake eye, that metahuman dude. We see him, which is like, oh, we haven't seen him since the last season. When wasn't that last season they were getting hunted? Him in particular was getting hunted down along with other people. That whole situation. So we haven't seen him since then. So to see that, like, oh yeah, because like Cicada was going after all of the metahumans. I was trying to remember what the whole situation was. It's like that's what it was. But nevertheless, I thought that was kind of, you know, it's pretty dope to see him. So I'm wondering, are a lot of those people like people from her, you know, criminal days, or are they just like some criminals, some just like friends of friends type of thing? I don't know. Regardless, it was kind of nice to see them kind of party up and enjoy it. Some other things that went down in the episode, obviously, Iris and the whole Allegra thing, because Allegra found out, like, hey, Wells is still alive, which it's not the Wells she knows, because that Wells, well, obviously, in many different regards, that Wells is dead, to a certain extent. One, because obviously the Wells from Earth 1 is actually dead. Two, the person, obviously Eobard, pretending to be Wells, is technically dead. And I say technically because obviously, like with the whole time travel and stuff like that, he skirted around the whole being wiped from existence situation. So there's that whole thing. So there's the technicality to it, but it's like obviously like Iris brings this to Cisco's attention, and they go meet up with this Harrison this Wells, which is interesting because we never actually find out what Earth he's from, but it's like, oh, we're allies to like the Court of Wells. It's like, oh, really? Yeah, those bunch of idiots. So he seems like he's a very like Indiana Jones, like, and I do always appreciate that, the different Wells, and I'm curious to see, like, because I even love Cisco playing into the whole, the archetype, the story of like, this happens literally with every Wells we meet. First, you start off having issues, more specifically with me, but then eventually you let your guard down and you show your heart, and we become good buddies. I like that he was just kind of like making a joke of like, how things typically rolls between him and the entire Team Flash and the Wells. But this one kind of wanted nothing to do with it. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Batman with like the grappling hook and the smoke bombs and everything. And I even love Cisco being like, in all honesty though, that was kind of cool. And I was just like, yeah. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. Which Allegra didn't appreciate that, because now she's thinking Iris is a liar, which now you have to explain the whole multiverse thing, which is like, well, would she accept that? Well, it's like, well, metahumans are a thing, so will that involve having to be like, yo, so my hubby is the Flash and everything, so maybe you have to bring up that conversation, which this is also happening while Crisis is like, once again, like 7 weeks away, so it's like, there's a lot, you kind of have to keep, which that's something that's kind of interesting, like, you have to keep her cool under the pressure of knowing, like, literally this is all supposed to be going down in the next, like, 7 weeks, so that's a big time, marker, so. But the whole situation has led both Barry and Iris being like, maybe we shouldn't keep the fact is from, like, yeah, we wanted to protect people and stuff like that, sure, but the fact of the matter is, they're our friends, they're the people we care about most, we're doing, the whole point of sacrifice myself is for them, they have the right to know, because it doesn't feel right keeping this from them. So they, Frost kind of figures it out, because the way like Barry kept talking about the fact is, it's like, you talk about all this stuff about Crisis, but you never talk about you after Crisis, so you're not coming back after this, are you? He ends up telling them all, like, if they're going to save everyone, they can't save him, they have to let him die, because he has to die during Crisis for everyone to be saved. So that's a hard pill to swallow. At the same time, there's everything with Ralph and his mom and Cecile. I thought that was kind of a pretty interesting storyline of like, it's like, oh, she's being blamed for this robbery, but because she has been connected to a lot of crimes in the past, she's like, yes, but never officially charged. So they're trying to get her alibi, and showing that her mom does kind of have a bit of a gambling addiction. And I do like that, even with a little bit of time we spend with Mama Divney, you see that she is so much like Ralph, because they're both sitting there being like, oh yeah, there's a camera. The guy's like, oh, there's no cameras here. It's like, really? There's a camera here, and they're pointing it out and stuff like that. You can definitely say that, you can tell they're definitely cut from the same cloth, so. And so she's playing cards, and she's winning because, Cecile is giving her a hint to be like, yo, when to kind of go all in or not, because of, her powers and everything. But obviously, I think because she probably got a little full of herself, I'm like, oh, I'm winning. It's like, but yeah, your big help is right here telling you, like, to slow down, but you get too hyped into it. So luckily, Ralph had already stolen the drive anyway. But it was kind of an interesting twist of that whole situation, was finding out, wait, every guy that she's ever dated since Ralph's dad, she kept saying like, oh, this person died, which obviously Ralph's actually talked about some of these significant others of his mom's over the course of the show. Ever since he's popped up, he's kind of referenced like the different people his mom's dated and the impact, who they were, and just the impact they had on his life and everything. But it turns out one of those said guys, was it Marv, is still alive. And it's like, wait, why'd you lie about that? It's like, what about all the other guys? It's like, yeah, they're all alive too. It's like, then what about Dad? Did he actually run away? Did he actually leave? It's like, yeah, he actually left. Which for Ralph, it's like, why would you, do all that? These are people I cared about, and you just told me they died. It's like, well, you moved on so quickly. I literally only moved on so quickly because I was trying to be, brave for you, because it's like, probably the thing of like, your dad left, so he felt like he had to be, the man in the house. So it's like, I have to be strong for my mom, but she ends up revealing later on that obviously, like, her, after Ralph's dad left, it broke her and him, because like Ralph would come in wondering like, is Dad going to come back, and him not breaking her heart because it broke Ralph's heart, and she didn't want that same thing to happen. So when her next boyfriend Doug and her broke up, she just like it was easier to be like, oh, he died, because she didn't want him to go through the trauma of having someone else exit her life. But beyond that, it's like, what about everyone else? She broke up with them as a precursor of like, well, because the fact is, it's never going to work out, because she wasn't willing to put herself back out there, because she was afraid of getting her heart broken, of just like, oh, so you're just going to potentially leave me, you know. And it's actually kind of interesting, because Ralph had actually talked about the fact is that both her and him need to kind of open up their hearts to love, because they've kind of, which is so interesting considering the fact is Ralph has been matchmaker in the sense that he has helped, you know, Cisco deal with, you know, a hard, you know, his hard times of like obviously his breakup with Cynthia aka Gypsy, as well as him being with Camilla, like he helped in that regard, and obviously he's helping Frost in her living her life, which I'm still banking on, like, the fact is that's going to be something. Maybe not, but the fact is that even Ralph's kind of like, oh, we need to open up our hearts to potentially, you know, let in love. But, you know, his mom is like, no, I let in love, but the fact is I just don't think it's for me or whatever. But Ralph still slips the little book in her purse to be like, no, like, I want you to, you know, be happy. You deserve to be happy, Mom. We both do. So I think that's definitely going to be something interesting we see going forward into Ralph's story. I'm curious if we're going to see any more of his mom this season or not. That was kind of a nice little, just like, you know, pop in. That actress, I know her from something. I just can't place it. I didn't even look into it because she looks so familiar and it bothers me, because I'm like, yeah, I've seen you in something. It feels like multiple somethings. Like, she's just one of those actresses. She has that face where I'm like, I feel like I've seen you in quite a few things, and I just can't remember what. But like I said, that's something I'll kind of look into on my own time. So then there's the whole situation with, once again, Ramsey, that basically he's seen what this substance is capable of. The fact of the matter is, combining dark matter with like healthy cells, that basically it can fix whatever's broken in a person, which I guess you can, to a certain extent, you know, whatever's kind of lacking in a person, I guess, like, to an extent, you can see that with anyone that becomes a metahuman, that it kind of fixes maybe something that they were lacking, like maybe because Barry was always running, but he was never the fastest person, and it kind of fixed that. Obviously, Ralph got a little schlubby, but because of his, you know, elongated man abilities, his rubber abilities, he kind of fixed it, you know. So I think you could see that in certain aspects, but with the way he's using it, it can basically affect cells, kind of, you know. So basically he's planning on using it to heal himself, which he absorbs it, which is like, oh yeah, I'm good, but I need even more to kind of heal. So it's like, I'm assuming he's going to go infect more people like he did Romero. So I think it's going, I'm curious, like, because like what's interesting too is like, I was curious like what that whole situation was going to be like, but it does seem like once the goo is kind of infected the person, that basically they have to die first and then they come back, because it needs to attach itself to the healthy human cells and stuff like that. So I'm assuming he's going to go around infecting a whole bunch of people, and then afterwards he's going to take the goo out of them after they've gathered a huge amount of dark matter. I don't think it's just going to be like, oh, I'm going to infect you and then I'll take the goo. It's or maybe it will be as simple as that. Or maybe he's going to use them as like, oh, I want you to all go out there and collect dark matter, which, you know, dark matter doesn't seem like it's going to be that easy to get. But I think it's just if he takes the goo and infects a person, kills them, and the moment he pulls it out, then he kind of gets what he needs more and more. So I think we'll potentially, like I said, depending on how they handle this, but it could be like a whole bunch of army of like, you know, kind of, you know, like his Romero's name kind of implied, kind of going down the, you know, George Romero route of, you know, Night of the Living Dead type of thing, which I referenced that recently in something else. I don't remember what it was. I referenced that. I think it was Supernatural. I made a reference to Night of the Living Dead. But regardless, I think we could potentially see that things kind of go that route. I'm curious to really fully see what this whole thing that, you know, he has going on manifests itself. Like, will he turn into like what will he turn into? Like Ramsey's like full form with this whole thing. Like, once he's gathered enough, what will that look like? Or is his power having this army of superhuman beings, basically? I don't know. I'm curious to see where that goes. Then there's also like everything with this Wells, this mysterious Wells, this adventurous Wells, borderline, like I said, Indiana Jones, like, where he's searching for something called Eternium, And it's like, wait, what is that? And why are you on this Earth searching for it? Is it only on this Earth? Which is interesting because Arrow-wise, at least based on last week's episode, we saw Earth 2 finally getting sucked up by antimatter. But it could just be like, well, because timelines are kind of all over the place. Like, obviously, like, that's probably happening. Some of those episodes of Arrow are probably taking place in the future of, like, maybe a week or two before the events of, like, some of this stuff in, the Flash. Or maybe it just could be the thing of, like, the antimatter's eating one Earth but hasn't quite gotten to other, so it's just probably like the time frames just probably potentially going to be all over the place. But also you got to remember too, the Arrow is on an accelerated path just because, well, it's like, it's only 10 episodes, so that's something else to kind of keep in mind. But regardless, I'm very interested to see ultimately where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode, now that the entire team has the news of, right, Crisis is coming, and it will be the end of Barry, potentially. How do we prepare for that? What can we do if interfering means saving him, meaning dooming so many lives, So, very complicated situation to find themselves in, and I'm curious to see how this all gets handled going forward. And now moving on to this week's episode of Arrow. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we have our team in Hong Kong back on Earth 1. Now that leads to some interesting conversations between Oliver and the Monitor. Basically, the Monitor is basically blaming Oliver for everything that went down because it's like, if you hadn't interfered with that world, I guess like basically his interference shifted the world's destiny, and maybe that accelerated things. That's why the antimatter hit it when it did, because it was just a thing of because you interfere. But the question then becomes like, well, is he lying? Who knows? But now they're in Hong Kong because they're trying to get a Dr. Robert Wong for whatever reason, because once again the Monitor is not telling Oliver anything, just that these are necessary things for the coming crisis. But what part they play and what they're going to be, what is going to go down exactly, he's keeping all those details because it's like, it's for me to know and for you to just shut up and follow orders. So that's a whole thing. We do have Oliver joining forces with Tatsu, aka Katana, again, which is so interesting. Little side note, if you're in case you're curious, the actress who plays Katana, I don't know what the proper pronunciation, whether it's Ryla or Rila, but the actress, most recently, I want to say the most recent thing I saw her in, she was in the first episode of season 4, Blind Spot. The actress, the person that Jane was fighting sword fighting with at the beginning of the episode, that was her. And she's also one of those actors who's bounced between Marvel and DC because she was in the Wolverine. Didn't it come out like 2008, 2009, I want to say? Maybe? I don't remember. Or maybe that was 2012. Was that 2012? I don't remember when that movie came out. The Wolverine. I want to say that was 2012, maybe. But regardless, she was in that. Except she had like red hair then. But nevertheless, I just thought that was just, in case you were just curious on the acting, from the, regardless, I'm going on a bit of a tangent. But it is nice to see them reunited because once again, they haven't seen each other since. And I think I brought it up before season 4. So that's actually kind of interesting. Being back in Hong Kong because obviously she can't be back with the group that she was a part of before because she disobeyed orders helping them last time, and now she was kind of on the run because they want her dead, and she decided to come back to Hong Kong because, kind of whereas Oliver went back to Star City, Tatsu kind of did the same thing for Hong Kong because the place where her son died, she's trying to kind of make things better. So now they're like in pursuit of this doctor who's being hidden by the Chinese government because he's working on projects for them. Obviously, lo and behold, who shows up? None other than China White, which even I'm like, why is she here? Because it's like, when the last time we saw her was literally last season when she was kind of part of the pseudo new Suicide Squad, which included Ricardo, Cupid, and Deathstroke's son. So that was interesting. But I was like, how is she here? And it's like, apparently, now it kind of makes sense in the grand scheme of things. Maybe we'll kind of circle back to it. But it's like, because it's like, oh, Lila thought she was locked up too. But apparently it's like, oh, the government doesn't like finding out that you're putting bombs in people's heads. So they paid her off. But I'm like, I don't know. I feel like they let that slide. But I mean, I guess in the grand scheme of things, John did get fired and everything. So it's just kind of like I guess it makes sense. But part of me wonders with the grand scheme of things, Well, let's go ahead and break it down. The fact is, it seems like Lila is working with the Monitor. It's like, why didn't you tell me what was going to go down on Earth 2? What about what Laurel's going through? It's like some sacrifices are necessary. Because I'm thinking that it is like we're gathering everything we're going to need, but also he's putting Oliver through some hardships because it's like, hey, Oliver needs to basically steel himself, STEEL, for what's to come. If he wants to face this crisis, if he's going to be willing to die to save everyone during this crisis, you know. So once again, the parallels between him and Barry, it's nuts. It's almost like kind of like, well, it makes sense that things are kind of going down that route, you know, just because they are kind of like, obviously show wise, but also just character wise, they are the kind of both the leading charges for everything in this Arrowverse, you know. So, but regardless, once again, tangent and all that. But it's like, part of me was wondering, did Lila set up the whole situation of China White getting free? Was that kind of on her side of things? Or was that really just legitimately like, oh, like, not, you know, cruel and unusual punishment, putting a bomb in people's head and threatening to blow up their head if they don't do what you tell them to do? Who knows? But China White also brought up something, Oliver brought it up, where he was walking up to her being like, the fact of the matter is, it's almost come full circle of like, it's me and you have been enemies for a long time, but what's coming is going to literally be the fate of everything, this coming crisis. So we need to kind of put that, our enemyship aside and, you know, work together, or at the very least, like, because all of this is small fries compared to what's coming. But it is kind of interesting how things have kind of come full circle. It's like, well, look at literally everything last episode was coming full circle. Everything with his mom, with Malcolm, with Tommy. It's like he had to face off against his best friend, the dude that was like a brother to him. And now in this case, he's facing off against one of his enemies who's been his enemy for years. Him and China go way, way back. So it's just interesting to think about those parallels as well. It's like, oh, here's the past coming back to face you. Here's another past, you know, certain elements like that. I don't know. I just thought that was kind of fascinating when you actually think about it. But it is that complicated situation of Oliver is willing to do whatever it takes now. You know, it's like, oh, those people are kind of getting poisoned by some gas and stuff, but Oliver went after the, you know, Dr. Wong anyway. But even, you know, Tatsu is like, why did you do that? Those people are in trouble. Because when she because that's like, those are the actions of the Oliver I met so many years ago in Hong Kong. Like, it's almost like you've reverted back to that person who's willing to do whatever. You're so single-mindedly focused on a mission that everything else falls to the wayside. And it's like, because of that, so much happened. Obviously, she ended up losing her son. The fact of the matter is, Oliver even ended up losing a part of his soul. It's like, because Oliver's trying to explain later on, it's like, I'm not motivated by anger, because it's like he wants to use the same virus that's being created by Dr. Wong, that was used all those years ago, the same one that killed her son. And, you know, it's like, it's like, we need to use this to trade to China White to get, you know, the doctor. But it's like, if we do that, it could easily fall into her hands. And the fact of the matter is, you know, for Oliver, he has to believe in this mission. And I thought that was a powerful moment of like, the fact of the matter is, I've left so much behind. I left behind my wife, my children for this, because, you know, he knows taking on this mission is a death warrant. But if it means protecting, knowing that his family will get to live, that so many people have lived, because he already feels like he's screwed up because one world is already gone and there might not be any coming back for Earth 2. So I owe this for everyone that's lost to, you know, keep this fight going. Because even if I'm not 100% sure about what the Monitor, whether he can be really trusted or not, the fact of the matter is, so many people need help, and if I don't do this, I have to hope that everything will turn out. But, you know, for Tatsu, it's like, but the fact of the matter is, there is another way. You don't have to just go down this particular route. You can find another way. There always is another way, you know. And Oliver's kind of stuck between like, but the fact is, if I'm looking for another way and this opportunity passes me by, like, because even he's like, I don't know if the Monitor actually can help fight this coming crisis, if, you know, what this all really means. But he has to believe in it, because otherwise it's like, then all the sacrifices he's made, all the sacrifices others have made for this fight, you know, what will it all have been for? So luckily, even during the exchange, they end up fighting. I did like that Tatsu and China White clash, and that Tatsu does win. But I was kind of scared for a moment because it's like, especially when she got the upper hand, because like Tatsu had obviously won the battle, but China White was like, you need to you better make sure you kill me, but ends up stabbing her, and it's like she's about to basically do what Slade did to Moira, and so I was almost scared, but luckily she Laurel shows up, which also Laurel and Lila, had their moments together because obviously they're trying to get her back to Earth 2 and everything, but sadly for her, it didn't work out, because Earth 2 is gone, and that's heartbreaking to know. Not only all the people you cared about are gone, your entire world. That's a heavy thing to have to carry, which obviously, Oliver's literally carrying the other the other side of that burden of like, literally the burden of knowing that, hey, a world is gone now and you didn't save it, and also literally the fate of the multiverse is on your hands, not just the lives of the people on this earth. Because even Laura had brought up the fact is they weren't your people, that wasn't really your Tommy or whatever. Those were people that were important to me, but the fact of the matter is they were just reminders of people you cared about. But the fact is, if they were just reminders of the people he cared about, why would he go through so much? I mean, because the thing is, he went through so much to save Tommy, to stop him from doing what he did, so obviously Laurel is pissed and has every right to be, because it's like, all this happened because you came to my Earth. It's like, who's this, it would have eventually happened, but once again, who's to say like all that went down because of Oliver's interference, or was it specifically the Monitor accelerating things to make it so that things go down that way, to push Oliver, to motivate him down this route. Once again, it's just, how did that link up, like Lila and the Monitor? Because even Tatsu had brought up the fact is, the group that she was with before, there were rumors about the Monitor, so maybe he came to Lila because she has her own part to play in this, which we know future arc wise, it's like, well, obviously her and Diggle weren't around anymore, so it's like maybe that pertains to all of this as well. So, which is almost sad too, because Lila has a part to play in all of this, that maybe her helping out Laurel was because she kind of felt a little responsible because she's playing a role in all this, but even she isn't being told everything there is. But it's like, the Dwarf Star, now this Dr. Wong, is like, is a weapon being crafted for this coming crisis, or what's going on in that regard, So I'm curious about all of that. So Oliver has decided, though, that he is going to ask questions, no more just blindly following the Monitor's orders. If he's going to continue down this route, he needs to make sure that, obviously, like I brought up earlier, that this is the right way to go about things, that this is the way to saving everything, making it that this mission is worth all the sacrifices, because even Laurel steps in to help, because it's like, my world might be gone, but Lila reminds her the fact of the matter is there's still people in this world who need you. The fact of the matter is, that's kind of sadly the part of being a hero, is even when things kind of get tough, you don't back down. You get up and keep fighting. You fight for those who are lost. Fight for those you can still save, so. But Oliver's also said in his mind, if he's going to find out more about the Monitor, he's got to go to someone that's a group that's even more ancient that would know about him. And it's like, okay, we're going to visit, the remnants of the League of Shadow Assassins. Right. I keep doing that because Gotham kind of screwed me up with the whole League of Shadows thing. Once again, it's literally the same thing, and just for whatever different reasons they refer to it as different things. Which, obviously, this is stuff I saw in the trailer, which obviously this is going to tie into whatever happened between Thea and Roy, whatever it is that he kind of refused to talk about last season in the future stuff. So there's that side of things. So that's going to be interesting, because it is an ancient order that has been around for a very, very long time. So obviously they'd heard rumors and whispers about the Monitor too. So, because I was kind of under the impression, at least the way some people kind of talk, like the Monitor is a bad guy, that he isn't a good guy. So maybe he's just using it. I don't know. maybe he's just pretending like, oh, I'm gathering in these champions, but maybe he's the one that we should be worried about. I don't know. I mean, that doesn't mean they can't like shift characters around, because I think there are some characters, I mean, some like adaptations and things, or if like some characters that typically might be villains might shift over to, I mean, well, it also depends on Earth, because look at Adrian Chase, he was Prometheus, but obviously, you know, on Earth 2, he was the Arrow, he was the Vigilante, so there's that whole situation. But regardless, that's me kind of going in a tangent, so that's where things kind of stand present day, which that's, like I said, that's a whole other thing in itself. But then there's also everything in the future art, because obviously, you know, you have Connor being stuck in this tough place, because it's like, obviously, you know, this is still his brother. This is, you know, John Jr. we're talking about. So it's like, it's hard for him to separate that. And the fact of the matter is, obviously, Mia's not too happy about it. She's kind of like, your brother gets in the way again, I will take him down. And it's like, your need to try and save your brother. It's like, no, there's no good in him. The fact of the matter is, you know, because even she had brought it up, because the fact is, it's like, how did John Jr. turn out so twisted? Considering the fact is that, you know, I mean, hell, look at you. Your dad was literally, you know, what was his, Michael Jai White's character's name, Turner. It's like, your dad was literally a villain, and look how you turned out. You turned out decently well. And your parents, Lila and Diggle, were like super good guys. So it's like, how did, yeah, but it's at the same time, it's like, Connor kind of blames himself because he feels like he got all the attention, like all the love and care, whereas John Jr. kind of, you know, because I guess you can make the argument that they looked after him because it's like, well, he's someone else's kid, so he kind of took a little more priority over John Jr., which maybe that made him resent Connor a bit. Obviously, they going through all this because they think like, oh, he's trying to sell off some of the stuff that he stole last episode, but John and Connor have a sit down, which Connor's trying to beseech to him. It's like, I get it. Like, the fact of the matter is, you were always there for me, bro. You were always looking after me. You were like my brother, my best friend, which is once again kind of almost full circle because of all that Oliver's dealing with. Like I said, dealing with the whole Tommy situation. Now we kind of see a reflection of that in this particular art, you know, case as well. It's like, the fact is, you don't have to do this. Like, the fact is, you're the brother that would always stand up for me when someone tried to bully me or get to me or push me to do something I didn't want to do. But it's like, yeah, even in the case of like running drugs for someone else, I got in trouble for it. Even though I tried to talk you out of it, you still did it anyway, and mom and dad kind of punished me for it, which is just kind of interesting that you kind of nitpick over such little things. Like, the fact is, it's like, oh, I got grounded and stuff like that, but I guess it's part of a bigger picture of just kind of like, I became almost the other child in our relationship, in our family, you know? So I'm assuming that just means that whatever happened to Turner, which that might be something that we see kind of take part during this crisis as well. Because last time we saw him, he was still alive, and obviously there was the whole Connor situation that we were kind of introduced to present day and stuff like that last season, but that was something that was never like, oh, now, you know, now it's my child is in your care. It's like, no, like, that those events that led to that still haven't happened yet. I think that's will probably coincide with the future stuff and that happening present day to really kind of bring that story full circle, you know? So we're also going to have to wait and see, but it is interesting because it almost seems like John is like, the fact is, this isn't a mask, basically saying like, I'm not putting on a mask to be someone else, trying to front to be some badass that I am. It's like, no, this is who I am, who I want to be. The fact of the matter is that they basically wanted to stabilize the city, so that it's like, oh, things are kind of trying to work their way to being better, but it's like, we destabilize it, we can run the city. And it's so interesting that the Deathstroke gang is potentially being set up as being like the main antagonist. In future arc-wise, I'm curious, are they just a precursor to something else? It could be like they're the catalyst that sets off the events that lead to other villains rising in Star City in the future. Kind of like a situation of like, once again, because I keep making references to it, like Joker. Spoilers for Joker, how the ending kind of sets up things where it's kind of like Bruce Wayne's story, like how this could potentially lead, well, I'll scratch the Joker reference. Just typically to think of like how Batman, well, I guess it kind of fits with Batwoman, because like Batwoman being there and people thinking Batman's back. At first, you know, when Kate's in the suit, it attracts villains that were waiting for Batman. So it might be that thing of like, you know, it might heroes rising up this, it's like, oh, you rise up, you save the city, but now you sparked other villains to kind of rise up and come back as well. Obviously the Deathstroke gang now, but who's to say it won't be more later on. You got your work cut out for you junior heroes, so I think that's kind of potentially a route they can potentially take with it, but we'll ultimately see. Maybe they will straight up just be the main antagonist, but that is a complicated situation to be in, because it's like, Connor's pleading to his brother, it's like, stop this, but he's not going to. It seems, I'm curious, is this simply a power thing, or does he have other ulterior motives? Obviously, some of his gang is there keeping William at bay. It's like, if you stop me, I will kill your brother, which even me is like, we see each other again, I will kill you, which is like, I would hold her true to that. So I'm curious to see, because sadly, sibling things don't always work out well. I mean, we saw where things went last season with Emiko and Oliver. It's like, even with the change happening, like, her story still sadly, tragically played out the way it did. So I hope that things don't end that way for John Jr. and Connor, but it might just be the sad fact of it all, of just, that's how things are. I mean, it'd be interesting too to see, I saw something that kind of made me think, like, not unless they're kind of combining this continuity with Star City 2049, what that meant for Connor's character necessarily in 2049. So not unless they kind of bring that full circle in regard, but I wouldn't think so, because I feel like they'd be more so Mia in this case. But regardless, it's going to be interesting to see ultimately where all this takes us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.